All right, welcome everybody to the post-draft edition of Under the Dome. Bob, I've seen you. It felt like every day this week between our live coverage that we did Thursday and Friday night, and I know you and Brendan were on all day Saturday, and I know you and I were just talking off the air. You have not stopped since draft. Oh, Calvin's out here. Good. Calvin's out here because Calvin, we finally got one of your boys. We got a big, heavy set guy. And I know we've been waiting for this. It's like Bob and I were the tight end. We've been waiting for the Saints to do this move for a while. So, but Bob, how are you doing? Are you recovering yet?
Not even close. Not even close. Writing my pre-draft analysis pieces like crazy, as I've done every year that I've been in this profession. We had a total of 13 hours of live draft coverage between Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And thank you, Alan, for joining us for about 8 or so of those hours, through Thursday and Friday. But what a lot of people don't realize, and you do because you've done this. But when you're in the media, at least when you're in the media, if you're doing your job, draft coverage continues for about a week after the draft, because now you're analyzing the picks. This is my 4th show so far this week, and we got Bayou Blitz coming up tomorrow, and Lord only knows what I got through the rest of the week. But obviously through Saints Wire too, writing up analysis for the picks. Now, most of my film work on these guys, the majority of these guys has already been done by me. But now I have to put it into writing form, make sense behind the picks from a Saints perspective. Hey, why did they pick this player? This is his perspective fit immediately. This is his perspective long-term fit, et cetera. So I don't foresee, getting any rest until early next week. And then my second job kicks in, and retail jewelry. It's coming up on Mother's Day, so next week is a crazy week for me. And in the other aspect of Bob Rose's life, but listen, as much as it does tire me, the Bayou Blitz Draftathon is always an absolute thrill. Getting together with you, getting together with Brendan, we have a blast. And thank you for Jim Everett. To Jim Everett for jumping on with us Friday and giving us some great stuff, as Jim always does. We're going to have Tyrone Hughes on with Brendan and I tomorrow. Tyrone was unable to join us through the draft coverage, and then we're going to get caught up with Courtney Roby the following week. Courtney had planned on jumping on with us and was unable to as well. So it's from an outsider. And I get asked this a lot. It's off season. You guys probably don't have much to do. I'm like, the hell we don't.
Right.
Draft season and free agency season is our busiest time of year, far more than the regular season, because game analysis, those things write themselves. The bigger challenge is finding content and then writing about it in a reasonably intelligent manner, from there on. And hopefully I do okay at that aspect.
Well, that Jim Everett, when he joined us Thursday night, that was a really good story he told about his draft day experience.
Yeah.
And I had no idea, but it all makes sense with the Colts and everything else. For those of you, go back and find it. I mean, I know it's a long show, but and I should have made a note what time he came in, but it wasn't long after Ty Simpson was picked, if I recall correctly.
Did he jump on with us in the first?
I think it was Friday night. I think it was Friday night he jumped on with us. I said Thursday. I think it's Friday night, because that's what he came to talk to us about. Was about the Ty Simpson pick for the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
And I had mentioned, I said, well, Jim, it's been 40 years since you got picked. And because he was talking about taking a quarterback, even though you have a quarterback on your roster as your starter. And I said, well, Jim, you went into that same situation in Houston when they had Warren Moon and they draft you. And he said, yeah, there's a good story about this. I can tell you what I knew at the time and what I know later. And he went on the whole thing about it's such a classic Colts thing too.
Yeah.
And Oilers thing, we're just going to be petty. And we're going to, because you didn't agree to the draft compensation we thought you deserved. And so now we're just going to go ahead and take Jim Everett away from you, and then make you trade for him later. And then when Baltimore said, well, Indianapolis at the time said, well, we're not going to do that. And now it becomes, Jim's holding out for money.
Yeah.
And he went to a much better team when he went to the Rams. He really did. Mm-hmm. It was the Oilers were going through a lot in the 80s. It took a while before they got it turned around in the 90s. I was really, really surprised by the draft. I think day 3 especially. But as Brian just said, it's clear they decided they were going to build around Tyler Shuck. Mm-hmm. And as I told you off the air, and I posted this on Twitter, it's pretty obvious Kellen Moore is like, I never want to see a game plan that involves Dante Pettis, Kevin Austin Jr., and Mason Tipton ever again. Yeah. And they really upgraded the special teams, too. They really upgraded the special teams because I felt the latter picks, especially round 6 and 7, and even the second pick in round 5, were really tailored towards the special teams.
Oh, I 100% agree. The 6th round pick of Barry and Brown. Yes, that's a 3rd wide receiver. I didn't have that on my bingo card, but I've been telling people for months. The Saints are going to draft 2 wide receivers. I had it mocked, predicted, written about. We spoke about it Thursday and Friday. But make no mistake, if they get something from Barry and Brown as a wide receiver, that's great. But he was brought in specifically to be the new Rashid Shaheed, the new Deontay Harris. He is going to be your returner. If he makes this team, it's as a returner. And if he has anywhere near the success that he had in college, I mean, Christ, the man returned 6 kicks for touchdowns. Right. That's exactly the kind of explosiveness that you want. And that's the kind of explosiveness that the special teams lacked after they traded Rashid. Yes, it was a big loss as a receiver, but it was equally as big, if not bigger, as kick and punt returner. And Lorenzo Styles, he's still learning how to play safety. I mean, this is a former wideout at Notre Dame. That's only been playing safety for like 2.5 years. But what he has done very, very well throughout his college career is cover kicks, cover punts, do so with an aggressive style of play and a 4.27 speed with a labrum injury. He says he can go faster.
Absolutely. That's what amazed me. You run 4.2, which makes you the fastest guy on the team. And you said, well, I have a labrum injury. I would have run a 4.22 or 4.21 if I was fully healthy. I mean, that's amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah, it is. And obviously the football background. I mean, his younger brother, his brother, went early in the 1st round to Washington, I believe, got him. It's either. Did Washington get Styles or did they? Yeah, Washington got Styles and Giants got Reese.
Yes, because allegedly the 4 people that were on their board at 8, that they expected at 8, were Mason DeLon, Jordan Tyson, Caleb Downs, and Sonny Styles. They had those 4 names as possible at 8. If Love, of course, dropped to 6, they would have gone up probably to get Love at 6. But those are the names they had selected. And you saw Styles and Delane come off the board. Kansas City, once again, traded up in front of us and took him. And I think they don't do that if they don't think that New Orleans is going to go and get Delane. DeLon. I keep calling him Delane. DeLon. Um, so I understand the thinking behind taking Jordan Tyson. At the time, I was really concerned about his injury history and being able to produce. But I mean, seeing the interviews, seeing him talk about those injuries and what he is doing to try to alleviate that, coupled with the Saints now having a strength and conditioning coach that really emphasizes soft tissue injuries and the prevention of those soft tissue injuries, makes me think that this guy is getting ready to turn the corner. He's getting better quarterback play too. I mean, some of those injuries were because he had to twist and turn to hit these badly thrown passes. I'm not a big hospital ball nickname fan, but I don't think he threw hospital balls. I think he just threw bad balls at Tyson. So I'm getting more and more excited about this pick because I'm imagining potentials. I think he is just a component in a way to make this offense more explosive. And Lance and Berrien, I'm not really counting on them producing as wide receivers yet. I think Polk is going to be ahead of him. Trey Palmer is probably ahead of him at this point. But those guys are going to get worked in, and eventually they're going to replace some of those guys. But Tyson, Ville, and Olave, that's a pretty formidable trio.
Yeah, it really is. And really the major red flag I had about Jordan Tyson was the injuries. And people like to say, critics like to say he's injury prone. Look, knee injuries happen in contact sports. That's just a fact of life.
Yeah.
And he did have one knee injury. He actually downplayed the severity of it while it was being reported that he blew out his ACL, MCL, and PCL. He said it was only the ACL. And that was 3 years ago. He recovered just fine. Now, last year he dealt with a hamstring injury. But like you said, the Saints, new strength and conditioning team, has focused on the reduction of such injuries. If your name's not Kendry Miller, so I mean, I think there's something to be said for that. Outside of that, there were very few people that I read that had any critique on the style of play of Jordan Tyson and the upside and the potential, because one of the and I did my own film analysis, as I always do for my pieces, but one of the critiques that I've read from other people was actually this: he makes the acrobatic catch too often. What? How is that a criticism? And I mean, like you said, you got to go back and watch the quarterback play. And Levitt, God bless you, LSU fans, for the season I think you got coming up. Levitt, Levitt's a bird shot. It scatters balls all over the field. So, instead of criticizing Jordan Tyson for extending and twisting and making highlight reel catches, that's kind of the type of thing you want on your team, I think. And again, he's not going to be expected to be the number one receiver out of the gate. That's Olave. I can only see those two pushing each other. And now you have Ville in a position where he could settle into a consistent intermediate threat at the number 3 wide out. He's a different type of player than what you're getting out of Bryce Lance. Lance is going to win early on deep balls and sideline routes. Ville is your typical winner on contested catches and intermediate throws. And then you bring in a Trey Palmer and a Berrien Brown to take the top off of a defense, and you work Jalen Polk, another physical receiver, through the intermediate routes. I really like the makings of this receiving core. It's certainly heads and shoulders above what Tyler Shuck had to work with the last month of the season in 2025.
Exactly. So Brian's asking about the season already. I really can't tell you anything. He's saying talk about a matchup with Cleveland and Paris. I don't even know. I don't. Are we playing Cleveland and Paris?
Yes, that is official. Well,
Okay.
it's as official as you can get
Okay.
because they haven't announced it yet. But tickets are being sold for a game between the Saints and Browns in Paris on October 25th.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, get checked or check out the wonderful charity that we do. We work closely with at the Bayou Blitz. They're having a Paris trip. They're getting together a Paris trip where the ticket packages are on sale right now. Starting at about I think 2,500. And that's for airfare and hotel. So stay tuned to the Bayou Blitz. So we will continue to promote that because there are still plenty of opportunities. That's. While it's still unofficial, it's pretty much it's as close as you can get to being official that it will be Cleveland and New Orleans in Paris on October 25th.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. My thing with that, I got to see how this team is put together. I really don't know how this team can be put together yet.
Right.
Before I can make any kind of predictions. I think there's a lot of training camp battles that are going to happen. How healthy we are and just how this offensive line gels.
Mm-hmm.
What's the running game like? Because I think the running game is more important than the passing game right now in the season. Although we have weapons in the passing game now. Don't get me wrong. But I think if they can't run the ball effectively, if they get forced into more third and long situations, that's not a good thing. But if you're third and short and you can run 13 personnel and throw passes to Oscar Delp, who's somebody else I loved in this draft. But you can throw 13 personnel out there and you get that defense to suck up and the tight end runs a seam route or a Texas route or something when he's matched up, especially an Oscar Delp or a Noah Fant one-on-one with a slower safety or a linebacker. I like that matchup. So let me see how this team is assembled first.
And I mean they have to all get on the same page with what Kellen Moore wants to do. Moore has to get to know his personnel and what they do best. Even Shuck. Shuck is working with let's see, Achan, Fant, Tyson, Lance, Brown, and coming back from injury, Polk and Palmer. That's 7 new targets that Tyler Shuck has to get on the same page with as far as hot reads. Where do you like the ball in this situation? The receivers have to know what my quarterback likes me to do in this situation. So it's going to take some time and reps. You got to be excited about what the offense looks like on paper. Certainly a far better unit than what we saw probably the last 2 to 3 years, if we're being honest with ourselves.
Right, exactly. And Calvin, you're right. Third and short, now you have a right guard or a left guard, if that's where they put him. You have a left guard that lives for these moments, and you're going to be you might be a left-handed team for a little while. And I like Banks and Edwards matched up against almost everybody in the league. I think that's a strong matchup. How healthy is McCoy? Ruiz is out there. He was on Teron Armstead's show. He's been everywhere talking about how he's been hearing the criticisms, and he is going to work to be in his best possible shape. I've heard that song and dance before. Let's see you do it on the field. That doesn't mean they won't have guys pushing him. Simpkins, the guy they just drafted, Jeremiah Wright. There's a lot of bodies out there now that can push him to, put your money where your mouth is. So, and then the running game. Is it going to be HN? Who's going to be the? I'm not penciling him in yet, but I want to see how he looks out there. I mean, they picked up Xavier Truss out of Georgia last year off the street when I think out of somebody's practice squad. He was somebody's late round pick last year. So let's see if Xavier Truss has anything. We haven't even talked about him. that's somebody to watch this preseason. Like I said, there's a lot of training camp battles to watch this year. And a whole new team basically that Kellen Moore is slowly assembling. He did it on offense. I think he does defense more next year. So there's a lot to be seen before then. But Bob, you and I were on Friday night when they made the selection for Christian Miller. And I, of course, was very excited about this because, you know, you need defensive tackles. You need a big body, somebody who can push that pocket in. However, once you made that decision to take Christian Miller, it kind of took edge rusher off the board. How do you feel about that pick? We talked a lot about it that night, but I want to bring it up now that you had a couple days to think about it.
Well, and I really thought that they would go after edge rusher or cornerback in the second round, and then address defense nose tackle later on in the draft, because it felt like you and I, for the last I don't even know however many months, have been saying, look. One of the needs not talked about enough for this defense is that big guy, that skilled big guy in the center. The Saints evidently agreed because they didn't waste any time. They got their wide receiver, and then they decided to fill the need at nose tackle with that second round pick. And Christian Miller, I don't have a problem with the player. Man, I like the player a lot. I love you can't. Saints fans, you are going to love watching Christian Miller play. Alan and I are kind of, young people would call us old heads. I prefer to call us experienced. We reminisce a lot about the Dome Patrol and just not only the skill, but the aggression and the throwback style of play that those guys had, in that era. Well, you can at least
Anna. He just can't.
Can't what?
She's asking. Not that I need another reason to resent Goodell, but why can't he get our name right? It's just impossible. They all want to say it the wrong way.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I really don't know why.
And I hope you tuned in for the Bayou Blitz because we call for the draft show because we have a running tally on Roger Goodell hate references every year.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, Saints fans, you're going to love watching Christian Miller play. He has that type of aggression that is just infectious to the whole defense. If John Madden were still alive and you're putting together his all Madden team, Christian Miller is the type of guy that would be on it because he's making tackles after his helmet flies off. That's just the type of player that this is. I'd like to see him play with a little bit more leverage when he is at the zero tech. But he has the power to push inside pass pockets. Just good enough lateral movement to make plays down the line. And this is a young man that's going to hustle on every single play, through every single whistle. He's going to be a handful for whoever is going to try to block him. And that's all Alan and I have been asking for the last few years. Somebody to be a handful in the middle, get some push up front, and tie up blockers for the Chase Youngs and the Carl Grandersons and the Brian Bressees to see more one-on-one blocking, so those guys can flourish.
Absolutely. I even said, don't be surprised on early downs that you may see Chase Young, stand up in the end, but you've got Brian Bresee out there with Christian Miller and Brockton all out there at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And, Brockton is somebody who really is more of a Bresee kind of player. He's not the big, run stuffer. He is a guy who can play the 5 technique and the 3 technique, not so much the 0 technique. And with those guys out there, you now have a big physical defensive line that can handle the run and stretch plays out and form that picket fence so the linebackers and the corners and the safeties can come and seal the edges. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for someone who's going to take those stretch plays, those plays where they try to run outside the numbers and stretch it out laterally so the running back is keep heading towards the sideline and he either goes up and gets tackled for a loss or the play ends up for a loss because he just runs him out of bounds. And that's what you're looking for. That's what you want in your defensive line. So it's beyond pushing somebody into the quarterback. It's also being able to set those edges, stretch plays out, and take away the cutbacks so they've got nowhere to run. And I think Christian Miller offers that, and I think him in that mix will make Brian Brzee a better player. And that's what you're looking for. And the comments, for me, just reading all the little draft comments from all the guys doing the draft grades and people, not just any idiots of podcasts like us. I'm talking about, the Daniel Jeremiah. Yeah, I know. But the Daniel Jeremiahs, all the people that are reviewing Greg Cosell, people like that, they're all like, that was really a good pick that the Saints did with Christian Miller. They'll talk about the injuries with Tyson, and they'll talk about Delp. A lot of them like Delp too. They'll talk about all the players, but when they get to Christian Miller, they all say the same thing. That was a really good pick. I really like that pick. And to me, when you've got that many people agreeing with you, that was a good pick. That's a great thing to hear. That means everybody knew what was up. And the fact that Lee Miller went, the kid from Texas Tech, Lee
Hunter.
Yes, Lee Hunter went. The next pick tells you that Christian Miller was probably on Carolina's board. It was probably on several other boards right behind us. So while it sucked that we didn't get a Zion Young or some edge rusher that we really needed, I was pissed off. I saw R. Mason Thomas go before us. Yeah. Because that was the guy I had us taking in round 2. But Christian Miller, you did not reach for somebody. You got somebody who was up there and can fill just as big a need as that edge rusher. How about the 3rd round pick, Oscar Delp? Now, I was a huge Oscar Delp fan. My son came in during our broadcast to tell me that he saw that's who we were getting. And he says, that's your boy. You got your boy. I was like that about Danny Stutzman. Oscar Delp was my guy, too. It seems like a lot of people went for tight ends in the 2nd and 3rd round. So he went about where he was supposed to go. I love the guy, but I want to hear you talk about him before I get on him.
I love the player. The pick itself was a head scratcher to me because, again, although edge rusher was pretty much depleted by that part of round 3, you still had cornerbacks on the board. And I know we'll talk more about cornerback in a minute and edge rusher in a minute. That was the only reason that it was a head scratcher to me. Because as I keep telling you guys, too many of you fall in love with individual players. The Madden style of play. We need this need. We need to fill this need. Take this piece of the puzzle and put it in. Well, it doesn't work that way. And just like we said about wide receiver, all 3 of their picks at wide receiver, Kellen Moore obviously looked at this offense and said, I need to do this, and this to put my fingerprints on my offense. And Oscar Delp was obviously a player he saw for that. So, while it was a head scratcher to me as far as being a bit of a surprise, I almost immediately saw the vision. And, first of all, fans, when is the last time, and I have an answer, but when is the last time the Saints have ever had a tight end room this deep? The answer is a very simple never. You can now line up in big personnel all 3 of these guys on the field, Juwan Johnson, Noah Fant, and now Oscar Delp, and have a legitimate receiving threat in all 3 of them. That is going to do wonders for Tyler Shuck in the play action game. That is going to open up better runs in short yardage situations. I compare it. The best comparison I could make Oscar Delp wise is a more athletic Foster Moreau. Delp is that good a blocker. Like to see him add some more bulk, but the technique is there. And he is a better intermediate receiver than I love Foster Moreau. Don't get me wrong. But Oscar Delp is a better intermediate receiver. you're going to see a vision for him from Kellen Moore right away. Moore made this pick with the ideas already in his head and probably on paper and how he wants to use him. So while I was not angry at the pick, and I admit that it was a bit surprising, it didn't take me long to realize Kellen Moore has a vision for this specific pick right here. And frankly, I can't wait to see what it is.
Yeah, I'd probably move him more along the lines of a Zach Ertz or someone like that as far as a receiver. Just kind of underutilized, unknown, because Georgia's offense and the quarterback problem, they had quarterback problems too. Once what's his name went to Miami. I just drew a blank on his name, but you know who I'm talking about, the quarterback, Carson Beck. Once he went to Miami. But my thing was, I think Delp, he's not a Brock Bowers. That don't get me wrong, but he is a guy who's an inline blocker, can release, run the seam route. He's got good enough speed to beat most linebackers and safeties. You're not gonna, if you put a corner on him, it's different. But I agree, he needs to bulk up a little bit more. But yes, now the tells are gone. The Saints, when they would line up in certain formations, they knew what they had to run because the guys they had, they're like, well, he's not throwing to him, or he's not going to do this. They're not going to run out of this formation. They went to 12 personnel with 2 tight ends. They knew if he's going to throw to anybody, it's going to be Juwan Johnson. Taysom Hill dropped 3 passes when he tried to go to him in the 12 and 13 personnel. So, and that's not a knock on Taysom. It's just that's how it was near the end for Taysom. But yeah, it's you've removed a lot of the tells. You can now manipulate the offense, go into formation, come out in 11 personnel, shift to 12 if the defense is in a nickel formation, line up in 13 personnel. Here comes their big guys, and then you can call a pass play out of it. So there's different things you can do, and I think that's the big advantage you have with that guy. And I think a lot of the tight ends that they drafted ahead of him aren't as good as him. No, the Texas A&M tight end that he took early, I'm like, that's awfully early for that kid. And it was a class that I felt like after you get past pick 15, pick 16, it's kind of a jumble just how you like these guys fit in your offense better. And that goes back to the Ty Simpson argument that Jim came in and talked to us about on Friday night. How did you grade that guy compared to the Rams? The Rams liked him a lot, and they liked him enough that they knew they weren't going to get him in the second round. So I think you saw people take players early because they felt like they weren't going to be there in the second round or the third round, so they grabbed them earlier.
Yeah, no, I think that, and, listen, I've been reading a lot of criticism directed at the 49ers the last couple of days, specifically for their pick that they traded back twice, maybe 3 times, and ended up with the first pick in the second round. And with that pick, they picked one of my guys, the Ole Miss wide receiver, Deshaun Stribling. Well, they're getting crucified for that. And I'm like, look, even by my own admission, I had him going anywhere between the second and fourth rounds. And, wide receiver, like several other positions in this draft, there were a lot of wildly, wild projections, ceiling and floor for many of these guys. One guy had, player X rated as a potential first or early second round pick, while another guy had the same player rated as, I think he could be there in the fourth round. Stribling was one of those guys. Delp was one of those guys. Bryce Lance, I saw projections that Bryce could go in the second round. So that's another perfect example.
You look at the cornerbacks. I mean, we might as well shift over to the cornerbacks. How many cornerbacks went so late? The kid from Miami that everyone was asking for, slid, I think, all the way to the 5th round.
Yeah.
Keith Abney went in the 6th round, and that was a guy I really, really liked, and that was one of my picks. No, I think he did. I think he went in the 5th round, but that was one of my picks. I had them taking in the 4th round.
Yeah.
I thought Abney and Nicholas Singleton both in the 4th round were great value picks, and you're kind of checking the boxes off one by one. But for whatever reason, a lot of other cornerbacks went ahead of them, and they eventually came off the board. But it was weird the way they had some of these guys were rated. Now, Keontae Scott, the kid from Miami I was talking about earlier, I think some of his negatives were he was undersized, and they felt he was only a nickel corner. He would never grow to be an outside corner. So they felt his ceiling was really low, and that's why he slid. Keith Abney, I know he got nicked by a lot of draft boards that he was too short. And they felt like his size was going to be a problem. And I'm like, this dude hits like he's 6'2". He's 5'11". It's not that short. But yeah, that was kind of the knocks on them too. So I think that was the same thing with how wild the swings went in the board. Different boards. It's just how these guys had them rated compared to the quote unquote consensus board. So Anna says we're stacked, but how sturdy is that offensive line? I think it's deeper than people than it was last year. And I think there's a lot of young people we need to see what they can do.
Listen, the key is Edwards. Edwards has to stay healthy. And for the most part, knock on wood, in his career, he has. But he also has to play up to that free agent expectation. If he can, then you have your left guard, which is a position that's been a swinging door. Saints had 3 players last year alone. 3 different players alone start at left guard. And I think during free agency, I think I counted 7 players in the last 3 years. 7 different players have started at left guard for the Saints. Well, you hopefully have eliminated that problem. And yes, I know Ruiz is still on the team. I have as big a problem with that as anybody. And I know McCoy's health and ability to stay on the field is a legitimate concern right now. But you brought back Dylan Radins, who I feel a hell of a lot better with coming off the bench than I do as a starter. You mentioned Xavier Truss, who was pretty highly regarded in last year's draft, as a potential middle round talent. And then Jeremiah Wright, who a lot of scouts loved, as a run blocker and a potential decent in pass protection. Once he improves his foot agility a little bit. So he's going to be a factor in. We both like Simpkins. Torricelli Simpkins from last year. At the very least, I think that you've improved your depth and you finally found an answer at left guard.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of these guys got experience last year, playing for the first time. I think the scheme works with the personnel they have. They had no problem shedding personnel that did not fit the scheme. So they weren't. There's no more Trevor Penning experiments. They're not moving people around anymore. I think now it's all about getting these guys to gel and getting the second string offensive line to develop and feel like, okay, if we have 1 or 2 injuries, it's not a disaster. We've got guys who can come in there and produce. And I think Loomis made it pretty clear about Jeremiah Wright. He is a right guard. He's going to work as a right guard. We're not going to cross-train him as a center or get him to, try out as third tackle or things like that. They're working him at a right guard. And I think that's the right thing to do for a rookie. I think when you get to Simpkins and some of those other guys, you maybe cross-train those. But I think right now, I think where he needs to be is You're a right guard. Learn how to play right guard in the NFL. Get your weight up, pick your feet up, that kind of stuff. But we're going to work on developing you as a right guard.
Yeah, and I was on Eric Asher's radio show yesterday afternoon. Outstanding show. I love Eric. But when we got to Wright, I was saying, I want Cesar Ruiz replaced, and I'm not the only one that feels that way. And I'm not saying that a 4th round pick such as Wright was drafted specifically with the expectation that he's going to replace Ruiz or anybody right away. But what I am saying is Jeremiah Wright started every game for the Auburn Tigers for the last 2 years at right guard. So I'm not saying, but I'm kind of saying.
Yeah. We might have to deal with Ruiz for one more year. If Wright grows at a much faster rate than even we're expecting, it may be that case where, like Carl Nix, when he was a 5th round pick, all of a sudden he is starting at guard. We might have I've seen enough moment with Ruiz if he goes back to playing the way he was playing, and we get that Charles Brown goes out and here comes Teron Armstead. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I don't think he's at that level, but I think he can grow to be that level. So, I like the move because you're planning a year ahead of time. You're not waiting until next draft to go and draft a guy in the 2nd round with the intentions we're going to put him in on day 1 as a starter. Because that's not really how you build a team. He needs to be a year in the locker room, a year in the weight room, a year with his coaches to just learn how to play the position the way he's going to play. But I like his temperament.
Yeah.
His personality. He's got that quote unquote nasty streak that we all like to hear that offensive linemen have. I don't know. Let me ask it this way first. Who are your favorite picks in the draft, and who were the picks that you were like, I don't know if they should have taken him. I think there was some other players they should have taken instead.
I love Tyson, even though I predicted and I had him mocked to go, defense, specifically edge rusher in the 1st round. And I've been pretty vocal as to why. I never said I didn't like Tyson as a player. I actually love him. My worry is that he could stay healthy. I love Kristen Miller and what he's going to bring to the defense. And I like Jeremiah Wright. I like the way he plays too. Probably for the same reason I like Kristen Miller is because he just had that nasty demeanor, that is infectious through the whole team. You see this guy, balling out on every play. He's making his opponent work on every single rep, throughout every single rep, and then some. That's infectious to the rest of your team. That's one of the ways that Demario Davis was so great, because he was that kind of player. Teron Armstead is that kind of player. From a temperament wise, those were my favorite 3 picks. Again, I immediately saw the vision for Oscar Delp. He's going to be fun, to watch, because obviously Kellen Moore has a plan for him. And then, you guys know, that have followed me know me that I'm a track guy. Just the pure speed that Lorenzo Styles, Barry Brown, and even Bryce Lance, brings to this team. This team got a lot faster with those middle and late round picks, and got a lot more physical, through the middle rounds with Miller, with Delp, with Wright.
Yeah, in fact, that's the title of tonight's show, Speed, because I felt like that was the theme of a lot of these players. It's about getting faster on the field. That Moore looked at the offense and special teams and said, we're not fast enough. We are not fast enough to be able to do the things I want to do. And I need guys who can run, who can make little things turn into big plays. And I think you got that with a lot of the receivers they brought in. I think you got that in the special teams. Like, you said off the air, Barian Brown, we draft him. He has 6 kick return touchdowns in his college career. What can you say about that? I mean,
right.
That he's going to break games open. Teams will kick away from him because they're going to be scared. And let's say, for the sake of argument, on a kickoff, you got Barian Brown on one side, you got Lorenzo Styles on the other side. Where are you kicking this ball? You're kicking it out the end zone because you're not going to dare let that ball bounce in the landing zone and risk those guys getting their hands on it and breaking in the open field, especially if you lose containment. Because you've got guys with a 4.3 and 4.2 speed heading for the end zone. And you can have a hard time staying in your lanes to contain those guys. So, I mean, that's a huge plus. So I'm very excited about it, and that's why my favorite picks in this draft, Miller, Delp, and Styles, because I see the vision for all 3 of them, and I like what they bring to the table. Yes, I'm disappointed we didn't get one of the top young edge rushers. I'm disappointed we did not get that cornerback. I don't think TJ Hall is the answer. No. I think TJ Hall is probably his future is safety at some point, because he's a very smart, very heady player, instinctive, makes plays despite his speed because he knows the game and knows where he needs to be in the game. So think like Sammy Knight. I hope he has a career like Sammy Knight.
Yeah.
But I mean, Sammy Knight's one of our. If I listed the top safeties of all time in this franchise history, Sammy Knight's probably one of my starters. Tommy Myers is my other one, just because I love Tommy Myers, and I love the way that dude hit. It's all illegal today. You can't launch yourself into people like he used to do, but he was little, so that's what he would do. And that guy would hit everything. His teammates. Is the opponent. He was hitting somebody. Yeah, and you're right. Lance, Trey Lance has kick return ability too. So, and here's the thing about TJ Hall. TJ Hall is a freebie because the Saints traded the 150th overall pick for Trey Wilson. Is it Tyree Wilson?
Tyree Wilson,
yeah. Tyree Wilson, who was the 7th overall pick in the 2023 draft. What do you know about Tyree Wilson? Because I honestly didn't know that much about him. I mean, I was aware of who he was. I've got it right here, actually, because that's the kind of weirdo I am.
Oh, I still got it, too. I know where you're going.
I pulled out my 2023 draft book to look him up.
I have Detillier's draft guide from 23.
I have Detillier's locked up in a box in the storage facility, but I do have Detillier's too. But I pulled out my draft guide to reread about this guy. I mean, Athlon had him as the number 2 edge rusher. I think Lindy's had him as number 4 edge rusher. Mike Detillier, I think, had him at 3 or 4 too.
Yep.
One of the top. He reprinted his thing. He didn't work in Oakland, but a lot of people don't work in Oakland.
Right.
It's kind of the opposite of the John Madden, Al Davis days. This is where good high first-round draft picks careers go to die instead of rejuvenated like they used to in the Madden. What happened with him in Vegas with the Raiders, and what kind of player are the Saints getting, Bob?
I remember doing Tyree Wilson's draft profile. I was with an unnamed publisher at that point. A cowardly liar of a human being, Kyle Mosley. So I guess I did name him.
Yeah.
Tyree Wilson was just pure speed coming out of Texas Tech. Wonderful burst to the ball, underrated power once engaging. But I remember my drawbacks on him were at the time. This is in the 2023 draft. He didn't have a natural bend around the edge. He needed to develop that. Needed to develop counter moves because any decent pass rusher in the NFL, you're going to need a counter move or a couple. And those were two things that he never developed with the Raiders. You could blame part of that, as I always say, you could blame part of that on coaching and development, but part of that's got to go on the player too. Which brings me to my next point. He's going to be he turns 26 next month, so you're still talking about a young player. Great length too. I talked about his speed, but he has prototype length, 6'5", 263. He's only 26. And this is a player still on his rookie contract, last year of his rookie contract. So he's going to be motivated, you would think.
He's on a prove-it contract.
Right, exactly. And he's with a new team, trying to prove it. So he's got himself a fresh start. You've got Chase Young opposite you. And guys like Brian Brissy and hopefully now Kristen Miller to tie up blockers in the middle. Tyree Wilson is going to have one-on-one opportunities to make plays and to develop. And you and I have mentioned this a lot. We both really like Brandon Staley's coaching acumen. I'm not going to say legendary, but he's up there with one of the better defensive minds in the NFL today. But we both talked numerous times throughout last season about how much we liked the young assistants, the positional assistants for the Saints, and how quickly that we saw some of these young players develop. Didn't get to see it from Vernon Brockton, but we did from Danny Stutzman, from Isaiah Stallberg, from the secondary guys. So we think Tyree Wilson's going to have the coaching. We think Tyree Wilson is going to have the motivation. Because he's still in small spurts with Oakland and then Vegas. Actually, I think they've been Vegas the whole time he's been there. The Raiders.
They have been.
Tyree still has a wonderful burst to the ball. You can't teach speed. And that's something that Tyree Wilson has. For those that wanted the Saints to get an edge, like myself, that wanted the Saints to get an edge rusher, once you got past that second round pick in this year's draft, there were no real edge rushers that were going to be decently rated. So what did the Saints do? You essentially got one in the 5th round by trading your 5th round pick. I said it numerous times on the air, so did Brendan. This is forget low risk. This is a no risk, high reward situation for the Saints. You gave away basically nothing because you traded your 5th round pick to get him, but you got that 7th rounder in return. So all it was a day 3 swap of picks and a potential edge rusher to complement Chase Young.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I looked at it. That's how bad the Raiders wanted to get rid of him. They gave him to us for the 150th overall pick, a 5th round pick. We still had another 5th round pick in that draft. And then we picked up an extra 7th round pick. So, TJ Hall in this case was Lanyap. This is a Lanyap pick. We picked a guy we have a little bit of a vision for. We're going to just see what this guy can do. He's probably going to be a
special teams.
Teamer. Yeah, special teamer. Maybe we'll see his intelligence. We can try and maybe move him to safety or something. See how he fits in this thing. Exactly. 3rd pick in the 7th round too. I mean, so if you're looking at how boards are so wild, I can't tell you how many times I look at some of the 7th round picks and go, "Damn, that guy went there. Damn, he went there." So I did not want us to end with pick 190. There was a lot of guys that were left on the board, and there were guys that were still on the board during the undrafted free agent part. I'm like, golly, I'd like to get a hold of this guy. I mean,
Deion Burks, a wide receiver that we were talking about going in round 3, went in round 7 after TJ Hall was picked.
I was watching him too. I'm watching him drop. I'm going, Are we doing 4? Are we getting 4 receivers?
I
because
said that too. I go, oh, please, let's go wild and go 4 wide receivers.
I mean, I'm like, somebody's gonna make this team. We're having a 4-man track relay with these guys, or somebody's gonna be a kick return out of this team. Because I had him listed as somebody for day 3 that looked to watch for. But yeah, there were a lot of guys that were just dropping, and I'm going, and they're picking other players. I'm going, I don't know who the hell that is, but this guy is still on the board. So I know Garrett Nussmeier was one of the ones that people just like, he did the long drop. I mean, he did 7th round pick. I like what Mickey had to say about him. I didn't want him to come to the Saints because I just don't want to deal with the whole nepotism thing. And honestly, I don't see a place for him at this point. But yeah, I mean, he went to Kansas City, and who are you competing against? You're competing against Justin Fields. I don't even remember who one of our former quarterbacks. You're competing against those guys. You got a great shot of making that team. I think you can beat, the little kid that we had on our team. I just drew a blank on his name now too. See, I've been looking at so many different names.
Jake Haener. You can beat Jake Haener. So, there were a lot of guys out there that I liked. So I think we've talked about just about everybody that they took. Some of the undrafted guys. I mean, we only took 10 undrafted players this year. Is there anybody in the undrafted market that kind of jumped out at you that the Saints brought in? I'm still going through those, and doing my film study, because typically a couple of the undrafted guys are guys that I had done late round profiles on, but that wasn't the case this year. Brendan likes to call my handy dandy notebook.
I'll throw a name out right now. C.J. Donaldson from Ohio State, the 6'2", 232 running back.
Pure power back.
Yes, he is not going to break a game, a play open. He is to quote the famous Dallas Cowboys fullback. If he gives you, what's that you got there?
My C.J. Donaldson notes.
Yeah.
That piece will be out before the end of the week. It's already written.
If you need 3 yards, he'll get you 3 yards. If you need 5 yards, he's going to get you 3 yards. I just like him I want to watch to see what he does as an inside runner. If he can pick up his blocking, I think that would help him get on the team. Because I think he's with this kid we got in the 6th round last year from
Devin Neal.
I think he's competing with Devin Neal. I think Neal's got the edge on him, but I think he's a bigger, more powerful back than Neal. So, I'm curious to see where he would fit in on this team. The other guys, I looked at the corners. I don't know much about the corners they brought in.
They're smaller. They're smaller ball skill guys. They might have trouble matching up, against physical wide receivers. But again, they could make a mark on special teams. And if they show out in the preseason in coverage, Deshaun Jones from Alabama is one of them. A kid from Southern Illinois. Sorry guys, bear with me. I got notes all over the place.
That's fine. They're asking me about Calvin's asked about Xavier Harris. He ended up with, hang on, where did he go? I'm looking him up right now. He was an undrafted guy.
Yeah, he was a guy Brendan wanted through the 6th and 7th rounds.
Oh, well, I looked at him too. And
and another guy, and I've already done my film notes on, so article to come. Michael Hedman.
He did not he is not signed with anybody.
Really?
Yeah, because there's a story in the Clarion Ledger, Mississippi Clarion Ledger from yesterday. Why did Xavier Harris slide out of the NFL draft, not sign as a UDFA? Pete
Wow.
Golding weighs in, and um, he was rated as number 5 defensive tackle. They think his off-field concerns took him off of draft boards to charge domestic violence and obstructing arrest in
Yeah.
2024. But it's weird that nobody would even try to pick him up as an undrafted guy. You have no commitment to him.
Right.
So I don't
Unless
know.
he has stuff pending.
Yes. But it says he is, as of yesterday, he's still, in another one 14 hours ago, still not signed by anybody. So I don't know. Asshole from Vanderbilt got to, somehow managed to get into their camp as an undrafted free agent, the quarterback from Vanderbilt. That's wild.
But another guy that I've done my film study on since the weekend, and have notes for a upcoming article is the defensive end from Central Michigan, Michael Heldman. Good bulk, 268, a little bit shorter than you'd want for an edge rusher. He's 6'3". Had great production for the Chippewas last year. Good size, decent athleticism, but just at least my film view of him, he tests well athletically, but he doesn't look that fast on the field. Doesn't have a great bend around the edge, and doesn't quite have the power to win every single match, to win the necessary NFL matchups, in the trenches. But I mean, he'll be given a shot in camp, and maybe if an Anferee Jennings, another free agent, the edge rusher that the Saints picked up, maybe Heldman can outplay an Anferee Jennings or a Fadil Diggs who's coming back from last year, and grab a spot at the back end of the depth chart.
I'm not gonna say the Saints would take him because, but they have waited for a guy to finish his legal troubles and bring him in. That's Carl Granderson.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they had Harris rated, but I would not be surprised if at some point Harris gets an invite, maybe as a tryout player for some of these mini camps or something like that, just to see what he's got. So the Saints did sign a veteran corner today, Martin Emerson. And once again, I dug up my books. Now, he goes back in time pretty good. I mean, that's the 2022 guide with Darryl Stingley on the cover. Out of Mississippi State, he had a torn Achilles last year that shortened his season, but he seemed to be a pretty solid player for the Browns. What kind of player are we getting out of him?
You're getting a man-to-man corner, actually, a physical press man corner, who is capable of playing the slot, good enough athletically. Doesn't have raw speed, but has nice quickness and excellent change of direction. Good ball skills. 2 or 3 years ago, he had 4 interceptions, and his first 2 years in the league, he had close to 30 pass breakups. So this is a guy that's going to be involved. If he's healthy, you could very much see him being your third corner. I don't see him pushing Riley or certainly not McKinstry necessarily. But I mean, he was a starter for the Browns, and I know they're the Browns. But 2 or 3 years ago, while Emerson was on that team, they had one of the more underrated defenses in the league, especially pass defenses. If Emerson is healthy, I think you have a potential steal of a signing here.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a torn Achilles, so it's the comeback. How long does it take him to get that burst and that speed back? And he's also a young kid. I think he's 25, 26 years old. So once again, you're not bringing in a Champ Bailey, or you're not signing a Marshawn Lattimore or a Xavier White. No, the kid from
Trey
LSU
White.
that was playing Buffalo. White. Yeah, you're not signing a guy who's in his 30s and had injury problems coming in to try and be that veteran cornerback. You're signing a young guy whose best years seem to be ahead of him. Yeah, he's 6'2", so it's a little bit hard to see him as a slot corner. But the thing I keep hearing, and that this is as of April 28th, 2026, not in August, that Justin Blackham may be that star player, that guy that they're going to try and slide into the slot coverage maybe.
Haven't you been hearing someone talk about that the instant they re-signed Blackman?
Yes,
Okay.
I have. Yes, I have. And outside of you, I'm now starting to hear from other people too that he is likely going to be that guy. And the question is, can he stay healthy?
Right.
And that's always his issue. But I think they're going to try a lot of combinations with these guys. And yeah, Calvin, it may be possible if he looks like he's recovered and he has his speed, you may see Riley get pushed down to the nickel corner and he kind of takes Riley's spot. You don't know. And like I said, as of April 28th, 2026, I don't know what the lineup is. And it's actually what's so exciting about this team is there's so many positions down. We can say, I really don't know who's going to start. And I don't know who's going to win these position battles. We're going to have a lot of competition. And these preseason games, it's going to be worth watching in the third and the fourth quarter to look for certain players. And that's something we have not said, especially in the Dennis Allen and the latter years of Sean Payton, because the roster was pretty much set. And you're talking about one or two guys fighting, or I mean, about a half dozen guys fighting one or two spots. So, it's interesting because this is when you have a rebuilding team. Anferee Jennings, I know you mentioned him. What do you think happened? Because some of the news has come out, but Kenyon Thibodeau, the Giants edge rusher, it seemed like there was a deal that was going to get done sometime during day 2. It didn't happen. And next thing you know, we're in day 3. And the reports are, they're not going to do a deal now. They're not going to do a trade. What do you think happened there? The story is coming out now. The Giants looking for a second-round pick, which, seconds before that story was written, here's the crack pipe that we found. Right. I mean, because you're not getting a second-round pick for a guy that you're pushing out the door because you just drafted his upgrades the past 2 years.
Yeah, right. And we saw Tyree Wilson, who's of similar age, similar draft stock, similar NFL production. Okay, Thibodeau had one really good year 3 years ago. But if you consider that year an outlier, then Thibodeau and Wilson are essentially in the same exact position. And Wilson was traded for a 5th rounder. But I started hearing the same thing that you did. I think I started hearing it like last night that the Saints Giants were expecting a 2nd-round pick. Well, and I think you were on the air with us when the Vikings moved Greenard to the Eagles, damn Eagles. Greenard, who has been a productive player, highly productive, was moved for a 3rd-round pick. And then instantly re-signed or extended by the Eagles, for a 4-year, $100 million deal. Well, Thibodeau, at best, is somewhere in between Tyree Wilson and Jonathan Greenard. So, right. I mean, maybe the Giants were asking for a 2nd-round pick, but most teams probably just laughed their ass off and hung up the phone. Or said to John Harbaugh, no, seriously, what do you want? Right. I mean, maybe there is some stock to that story, but there was no chance in hell that the Saints were doing it.
No.
Yeah, and not when you saw Greener go for what he went for, and not when you saw Tyree Wilson. And that's where I think the Saints. We were hearing that the Saints had alleged interest, at least early on, in Kayvon Thibodeau. Obviously, they pivoted from that. And to their credit, they moved on again to a similar player in a similar circumstance. With Tyree Wilson. And I think that's a good move for New Orleans rather than overpay for a player on an expiring contract who may or may not have some.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing. You have to make a decision whether to pick up his 5th-year option, and that you're going to. Well, I think the Giants did pick up his 5th-year option, but you were going to have to pick up his 5th-year option as well, and re-sign this dude. And it's not worth it. No, I mean, the guy's a good player. I think he would help us out tremendously because I think he would benefit from the scheme.
Yeah.
But I was willing to give the Giants a 4th-round pick, and that's about it for him. And I think the Giants were just out of their mind. They didn't want to. They wanted to feel like they were screwing somebody over instead of getting screwed over. But here's the funny thing. They're going to trade him at some point. So,
yeah, he'll be traded during training camp, probably for a 5th-round pick.
Exactly. Now you're not getting a pick until next year. You could have got a pick out of this draft. You're not getting the next year. You're probably going to get a 5th-round pick for him. Maybe a 4th-round pick if right before the trade deadline, if some team needs an edge rusher, but you're still not going to get the value you wanted for him during the draft day. That was your window to get that pick. So yeah, you're kind of stuck gambling that he's going to have a good enough year, and that's assuming he doesn't get injured. If he gets injured, then you get nothing for him. And you're going to let him walk and get nothing, which is also equally likely. So yeah, I just. You know what? You just do what the Giants do. I don't care.
Yeah, the Giants gianted again.
Yeah, well, the derp team. Just like the Jets of the butt fumble, they're the derp team. So yeah, my attitude is we've moved on. I would have liked to have had this guy on the team because I think again you're just bringing in more bodies, more competition. More rotational pieces that you have eight defensive linemen that can rotate in at any time, keeping this team fresh. Guys that have high motors into the 4th quarter, which is what you want to see. Yep. And I think if we would have gotten Thibodeau, I think people would have felt a little bit better about stuff in the draft. I think Wilson kind of scares them a little bit. Not having Cam back. Or somebody of Cam's caliber to replace his production. Once you lost to Mario Davis, now you're sitting there going, okay, that's a lot of tackles, a lot of pressures that we've lost. How are we going to replace that? And I think that's what people are really concerned about right now. And I think that's still that's yet to be developed.
Yeah. But again, just like we talked about in day 2, and Brandon and I compounded that in day 3. It's one thing for all of us to sit here and say, the Saints have needs here, here, and here. But the Saints felt like they had needs there, and there. And what I mean by that, obviously, they felt better about the cornerback room than what most of us did, because while Emerson, we think, could be a sneaky good signing, that's not the kind of thing you count on happening if you feel like you have a need at cornerback. You address it in the draft or free agency. They did neither. Same thing at edge rusher. Now you got Cam Jordan presumably on the back burner. Time will tell, and I think that'll be settled one way or another within about a week or so, at the most. But they obviously feel pretty good. Hey, we got Chase Young. We're going to draft some beef on the inside and work a rotation on the other side. And Granderson has been good as a rotational player. Yeah. now if you get something out of Tyree Wilson, and you can swap snaps between Wilson and Granderson, and maybe work some Anferee Jennings in there. You have some. If you can get, say, 8 sacks out of those guys combined, 8 sacks and like 20 pressures, and get another double-digit sack from Chase, on the other side. You're rolling if we think the interior is going to be as improved as we believe.
I mean, if you can shut down the run and put teams in 3rd and long, even an average pass rush can have an impact. Now, you can't be giving up 3rd and 11 and 3rd and 12 plays, because your coverage sucks. But I don't think our coverage is that bad.
No.
I just think that if we can get after the quarterback, we can do some stuff. And that Snead is still out there. That may be a guy at some point that the Saints, they look at during camp. And this is where I think the veterans also are looking at, okay, let's see what happens when they get guys out there and they put the pads on in camp. And they have time to really evaluate their roster. And Calvin, I totally agree with you. You're not going to get everything fixed in 1 year. We didn't get a Miami Dolphins haul. The Dolphins had like 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 3 thirds, 3 fourths. They had a ton of picks. We don't have that. Unfortunately, we had more picks. We had 5 picks, more picks after pick 131 than we had from 1 to 130, or 131. We didn't have enough in the first 100 picks. If you've got 5 picks in the top 100, you're filling a lot of needs, especially in a typical draft, which I think this kind of was a typical draft. It wasn't a superstar draft. It wasn't that, okay, I see, 6 Hall of Famers in the first 7 picks, but I see a lot of good future starters. And if you can get 4 starters out of this draft, and I think you can, and I'm not talking as rookies, but I'm talking like over the next year and a half, you get 4 starters out of this draft. I think you've had a great draft to go along with the draft you had before.
Yep.
So you're not going to solve everything at one time, but I think you can put bodies out there, and you got the coaching staff. I know, Brian, I was looking for your question earlier. What do we think about the coaches when Bob brought them up? I like the position coaches because they're college coaches, and I think that's part of the excitement of having young players. And I think that's part of the reason why we're having better drafts too, because you've got a lot of young coaches who know the game is changing and know the kind of players that college is producing that can, that can kind of fill your needs. So.
Yeah, and they're not far enough removed from the college ranks that they either coached against and or recruited a lot of the guys that have been drafted the last 2 years.
Hey, I think Bo Davis recruited Tyree Wilson because he went to Texas Tech and he was at Texas at the time. So they probably pulled out their old files like I pulled out my old books and said, this is what we have. This is what we wrote about this kid back then.
Yeah.
Let's look at what he's done in the NFL. Our weaknesses, are those things showing up and so forth. So anyway, Bob, you have a Bayou Blitz on this week, or are you and Brendan about burnt out?
Both. We do have a Bayou Blitz, but we are burnt out. Okay. So we're gonna get some help tomorrow night. Tyrone Hughes is going to join us, and I can't wait for that one. Ty, a great player, greater person, and of all the former Saints that we, you, me, Brendan, are blessed enough to be friends with, nobody has a better feel or is more opinionated about the current game than Ty Hughes. So I cannot wait to get his thoughts on the draft. As well as catch up with him about, he's told some stories before about his own pre-draft experience, hoping he's going to, be willing to relive that. And, Ty likes to talk, so I'm sure he will.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be great to catch up with him. He'll be our show tomorrow night. I'm hoping Brendan and I could just sit back and, have a few laughs.
There you go. Well, Tyrone Hughes is one of my 4 now. I have 4 players that I was in love with in the draft that actually the Saints took, and all of them did extremely well for the Saints. Tyrone Hughes, Jimmy Graham, Daniel Stutzman from last year, and now Oscar Delp. Those have been my guys so far, and it's certain characteristics, certain boxes they tick off, and Tyrone Hughes ticked off all of them. He got every single one. I mean, competitor, speed for days in his prime, local kid, passionate about the game. And that's the kind of stuff I look for. And that's how I felt about all these guys. So I was really excited and hoping the Saints would get a hold of those guys. And they have. We all know how Graham turned out. We all know the records that Ty did when he was here. Probably it would be interesting. Of course, I know Tyrone thinks he's the better one, but it would really be interesting one day if we could just pull these guys out of a time machine and said, okay, Michael Lewis, Tyrone Hughes, who is the better kick returner? Ty is going to, of course, say he is, but I would have fun watching that.
They both say they are, because I like to put, as you know, I've gone on vacation with both of them at the same time the last 2 years. And, when we have our Q&As, and hell, even when we're sitting on the deck, kicking back with a few beverages, mine are non-alcohol. Yeah. Mine are non-alcoholic. I can't say the same for Mike and Ty. But it's very interesting to see them go. And you know what? They have so much respect for each other too.
Oh, absolutely. That's the best part.
That it's awesome. One quick cruise story this year. I forget which night. But we were sitting outside. A handful of us were sitting outside of one of the comedy clubs because a few of them were going to go in. And Tyrone and I are sitting around BS, and Brianna, my daughter, was sitting there too, and Will was sitting with us. Will's all mad because he's not going to be allowed to go into the comedy show when they open the doors, because it was an adult only show. Yeah. And I'm talking to him, and I said, you and I can go, walk around the boat, do some other stuff, and he's sitting there all huffy and puffy, and a couple minutes go by, and Tyrone turns to Will, and he goes, "Hey, Will," he goes, "You want to go to the arcade?" And Will's like, "Yeah." So him and Will start getting up and going down to the arcade, and they were just going to go back down by themselves. A couple minutes later, Lauren decided to go against going into the comedy club. She ended up going out with a couple of the girls later, Courtney Roby's wife, Shireen. But we decided to go down. Will and Tyrone are sitting playing some kind of gun game or shooting. I got really nice pictures of it. They were playing as teammates for a little while, and then opponents. And I think after the second round, before they put more coins in, I asked Tyrone. I said, "Did you beat him too bad?" And he turns to me. He goes, "Your boy almost beat me." he's like, I was sweating it out, and the pictures I got, Tyrone had this look of just such fierce concentration on his face against an 8-year-old sitting beside of him. But that's the kind of, those are the kind of guys these guys are. Courtney, Mike, Tyrone, Delvin.
That's great.
Hey, Will, you want to go down to the arcade? And he was just perfectly fine hanging out with him for a little bit. It was just, they're such, like I said, they were all great players. They're greater people.
Absolutely. So, and I know Weston brought up Mel Gray. Mel Gray was another great one, but those two kind of followed each other pretty closely. Tyrone was finished by about 2000. And then, of course, Michael Lewis comes in 2001. 2001, he comes in and starts as a kick returner. So both incredible human beings, too. I've met both of them in person. Really fun to talk to and stuff. So, yeah, looking forward to the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night. Bob, try and get some sleep. I know you got some more stories to crank out, but try and get some sleep before your regular job takes over again when it's close to Mother's Day. And the rest of y'all, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the new people that came in, like Weston, and people like that came in tonight. Not this week, but next weekend is the first rookie mini camp. That's closed to the media, so there won't be very much, no contact. There'll be a tryout list of some players that go in there. But the end of May is the rookie the full mini camp when they finish OTAs. End of May, first weekend of June. So, hey guys, football season is almost on us already. School's wrapping up. Before you know it, it's July, and football season's back. So, in the meantime, we'll see you next week. Thank you guys for joining us. Check out the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Good night, everybody.
Night.